There are 4 people who have been admitted, but they're not coming in. Here they come. Okay. Okay, and just so everyone knows, I'm Judge Wilson, and this is an Atascosa County case because, well, there's still one more person joining, but just to let you know, because we're in court on Zoom, this case is being broadcast on YouTube. And there's a person who's labeled as John Mudry. Is that Miss Caldwell?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Barrera, do you need a chance to speak to your client in a breakout room before we get started?
I do not, Your Honor. The only information that I need is the witnesses that we have present. I see we have Dr. Joom, Dr. Sanambrosio, Joy. Who else do we have present?
Good morning. We also have John Stegan, and he's the program manager from the Bluebonnet Trails Community Service State Hospital Step Down Program. And we have, well, you've mentioned everyone else that is going to be in this on the list.
I see an Amanda Calderon.
Yes, she is our mental health specialist for the treatment team, but she will not be testifying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I think we've got one person. Well, they went away. Let's give them a moment to see if they come back. And do we have any paperwork that I need to look at, or?
Your Honor, there is a report dated November 7th of 2022 that should be in the court's file. If it is not, I can forward it to the court via email. Okay,
do you have a PDF of it?
I do, Judge.
If you could just, do we have any paperwork that I need to look at, or?
Your Honor, there is a
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Will somebody else say something, because?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
All right, we had a lot of frustration. We hadn't been broadcasting stuff on Zoom, I mean on YouTube, and I forgot the other day that once I launch YouTube and it's going, I have to shut it down or else we get feedback. Okay. All right, Mr. Barrera, if you could just post that to me in chat, I would appreciate it. And John Stegan, are you with the Kerrville State Hospital also?
No, Your Honor, I am the program manager for the State Hospital Step Down Program with Bluebonnet Trails Community Services.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me look at the file from Mr. Barrera.
And Your Honor, I also forwarded the report to Mr. Thornton. I believe he already has it, but I just want to show him what I sent to the court.
Okay, and
I do, yes.
whenever I hit download, it popped up a little one in parentheses to tell me I already have this on in my downloads. So I have read this. It's just been a while. I didn't realize I still had it. All right, give me just a moment. Okay, yes, I've read this. It's just been a while. Okay, so do we have witnesses we need to have sworn in then?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that would be
That would be Dr.
doctors?
Yes, Dr. Zoom, Dr. San Ambrosio, Joy Okoye, and Mr. Stegan.
Okay, let me ask the witnesses to raise your hands, right hands, please. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you may give in the matter now on trial will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. All right. And let me just one at a time, Dr. Santabrangio, if you would unmute yourself, I'd appreciate it. And Dr. James, did you say I do?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Stegan, did you say that? And you're muted.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Okoye, you said that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And Dr. Sambrosio?
I do.
Okay. All right. Is anybody asking to have the rule invoked?
I'm not, Your Honor.
Not from the defense, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Thornton.
Well, Judge, my understanding is that the hospital has requested to have her released to an outpatient program. That places a burden of clear and convincing evidence or a preponderance of the evidence on the defense. So I believe they had the burden in this hearing. So I think they should be allotted the opportunity to go first.
Okay, Mr. Barrera.
Yes, Your Honor. On behalf of Mrs. Caldwell, I will call Dr. San Ambrosio. And
Yes, sir.
is that the correct pronunciation of your name, Doctor?
Yes, Sant'Ambrogio, yes.
Sant'Ambrosio, okay. Dr. Sant'Ambrosio, tell the court a little bit about yourself. What is your position?
I am the psychiatrist on the team that's been following Miss Caldwell. She's been in my treatment now for over 2 years, I believe, almost 3.
Okay, and what do you work for Kerrville State Hospital?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I do. I'm one of the psychiatrists here at Kerrville State Hospital, and I've been working here since was it December 1999, I believe.
1 second, please.
I'm sorry, 2019.
Hold on, I've got it. I'm sorry. 11, I believe. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, and so you've been employed at Kerrville State Hospital since when?
Yeah, about 3.5 years, about 2019, I believe it was November, December 2019.
Okay. How long have you been a psychiatrist?
I've been a psychiatrist since about 1992, so
1992. Okay.
30 years. 30
Tell
plus
us
years.
a little bit about your education.
Yes, I went to University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston for medical school, undergrad Texas A&M, and I did 2 residencies in psychiatry. The first one at the UCSF program for general psychiatry, and then for child and adolescent psychiatrists at UC Davis Medical Center.
Okay. As part of this matter, you had to submit a physician's certificate of medical examination for mental illness.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. That certificate, is that something you're familiar with?
Yes, sir.
How often or how many times have you had to evaluate someone for a certificate of medical examination for mental illness?
Just overall?
Yes.
Maybe, let's see, I have a 20 plus patients, so we're talking at least like 60 times or so, I would say, because it's every year. It's more than that, probably.
Okay.
Everybody gets reassessed every year. And plus I do that also for patients on other units that sometimes require extra evaluations.
Okay.
So,
Have you ever had to testify in court about these matters?
yes, in the context of working here and in the distant past as well.
Okay. How often would you say you've testified in court?
Hard to say, that maybe 10 times or so, I would say, somewhere in that neighborhood. Not a whole lot of times.
Okay. And so you are the treating or one of the treating physicians for Miss Tashana Caldwell?
Yes, I am her current treating psychiatrist. Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the type of work that you do with Miss Caldwell.
Well, at this point, it's follow-up and continuation of medication to monitor whether some of the symptoms that led to the index offense would be recurring, and also to monitor for, in our hospital for any potential dangerous behaviors or situations. She has not needed any medication changes because her condition has remained very stable and under good control throughout the time I've been treating her.
Okay. So during the time that you've been treating her, you've never felt the need to increase her meds, or there was never any cause for concern that maybe she is not stable in terms of her, mental state, emotional state, anything like that?
That's correct. She's done very well. She has not needed any adjustments.
In terms of how she presents currently, and what I mean by that, her mental state, emotional state, how does she present when you have dealt with her?
Very well. She always presents well every time we've talked to her. She interacts with treatment staff in a very appropriate manner. She has shown no aggression or inappropriate behaviors throughout the time I've had been the treating psychiatrist. And even more recently, because we've had some changes on the unit due to COVID, we had to actually have her housed on a different unit, which can be a potential stressor for some folks. She has handled that very well and adapted well to those changes.
The medication that she currently takes, is it medication that she takes daily?
Yes, sir. Correct.
As far as administering her medications, are the medications, is that something she takes voluntarily?
Yes, there has been no problem with that.
Okay, so you don't have to, nobody has to force her to take her meds. She doesn't refuse meds or anything like that.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with her case history?
Yes, through the medical records. Yes.
Okay. And is that something that you would have to become familiar with in order to treat her, become familiar with her medical history?
Yes.
Okay. Based on your knowledge of her medical history, what type of progress would you say that Ms. Caldwell has made?
She's shown a great deal of progress since early on, but since before being at this hospital, the symptoms came under better and better control. And to my knowledge, she has had no, even before I was involved in her treatment, there has been no aggression or psychotic symptoms of any concern.
Have you, in your treatment of her or your review of her case history, developed any kind of, I guess, diagnosis of maybe the mechanism that caused this aggressive behavior?
There was a combination of factors, and again, this is long before I was involved in the treatment, but it was in the postpartum period. In addition to multiple other stressors that she was undergoing. And there was also some element of substance abuse in the distant past.
Okay. With regard to the medications that she's on, how confident are you that those medications will continue to stabilize her mental and emotional states?
I would say quite confident. There's never 100% insurance on those things, but as long as she continues to be monitored on a regular basis, I think her prognosis is quite good.
Okay. You completed this physician certificate of medical examination for mental illness.
Mhm.
And in it, you stated that a community-based treatment program is now felt to be sufficient. Why are you stating that?
Well, she has shown the ability to adapt. She's been very stable. She has also been involved in high trust work where she does this vocational rehabilitation work that involves, for instance, interacting with other units, bringing things to other units, and continues to show the ability to do that. And lack of aggression, cooperative with treatment, going to all our classes. Again, proactive also in showing her progress and past achievements as far as classes and courses that she's taken. And I don't see that there's going to be an obstacle in her functioning in the future outpatient program that is set up for her.
You submitted a letter to the court where you said the patient has reached maximum benefit from the Kerrville State Hospital. What do you mean by that?
But I mean that there's no further need for this level of treatment, which is usually for a more acute and less stable type of patient.
With regard to Ms. Caldwell's status, you understand that she was found, what we term in the law, not guilty by reason of insanity, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you have, what is your experience in dealing with patients who have been determined to be not guilty by reason of insanity?
Mostly at this facility. What do you mean by that? You mean in assessing?
Well, your experience in dealing with patients in that type of situation who have been found not guilty by reason of insanity by the court. Is she your only patient who has ever had that kind of status?
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, almost all my patients here are in GRI or not guilty by reason of insanity, and also other situations that require the involvement of the court, like not fit for
Incompetency
I'm blanking on the terminology.
Like
but,
incompetency to stand trial or things
thank
like
you.
that?
Yes,
Yes,
that's
okay.
it. But we no longer have those patients now. Everyone here is NGRI.
Okay. So you're quite familiar with the standards that apply to patients who are NGRI.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Based on the standards that are set forth by the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, your opinion is that Ms. Caldwell qualifies to be, I guess we would call it, begin a step-down plan.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
In making that assessment, is that assessment something that you take lightly or that you would do on a whim?
I do not. I take that very seriously, and I realize that there are risks involved in going from one level of treatment to another. In her case too, her medical history further supports safety. It was an incidental situation, but she also underwent a hysterectomy since she's been here. One of the major issues with the symptoms was a postpartum situation, which of course is no longer a possibility.
So because she's had the hysterectomy, there's no longer a concern of she's going to have kids in the future and go through a similar situation.
Correct.
All Is there anything else that you feel the court needs to know about your treatment of Ms. Caldwell in order to make its decision?
Yeah, I do feel that she's pretty much done everything we asked her to do and more, and pretty much has been a model patient here. And I do think that she deserves that chance to be treated in an outpatient setting. And we've had multiple discussions with the program, who sound like they're very, very competent to take care of and help her continue on
Yes.
with her life and treatment.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
All right, Mr. Thornton.
Thank you, Your Honor. So the certificate of medical examination, doctor, this is the same type of certificate you would file if we were asking the court to continue her on inpatient, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so the findings you have to make are the same. It's just at the end, you are making an additional recommendation that outpatient is the least restrictive method to ensuring her safety and the safety of the community. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So could you have also made a finding that neither is required and that she is fit to be released?
As in no further treatment, you mean?
Correct. Like, is that something you can do, or is a step down program mandatory?
It's a difficult question to answer. I would say in any situation where you need hospitalization, you would want some level of step down, whatever level that might be.
Okay.
And that be done in a gradual manner would be the wiser choice.
And why is that important?
To monitor for changes, because you can't 100% predict without follow-up and assess a person in a completely different environment.
Okay. So let's talk. I think you talked to the defense attorney a little bit about her medication. You have seen no issues with her taking her medication. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
How is that monitored? Is she watched when she is taking the medication? Is she just provided that and we are trusting that she's taking it? How does the hospital handle that?
No, she takes it with staff present.
Staff present. Okay.
And so, and they would report to me if somebody refuses the medication. That's always reported to the doctor and to the treatment team, for instance, or any other issues. We also monitor and do evaluation on, to monitor for any side effects of the medication.
Okay. Now, you prepared the certificate of medical examination. There's another report that was provided to us called a forensic consultation. I believe, I think Dr. James prepared that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a psychology evaluation.
Correct. And what is the purpose of that versus the purpose of the certificate of medical examination?
That's more in detail, and it's often more focused on risk assessment, so to speak.
Okay. Okay, I pass the witness.
Mr. Barrera.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Okay, your next witness.
Dr. Michael Jume and Dr. Judge, I don't know if Dr. San Ambrosio is released from the court.
I have
Mr.
no objection here.
All right, Dr. Sant'Ambrosio, you are free to go. You're free to remain and watch, or to watch on YouTube, whatever you would prefer. Go ahead, Mr. Barrera.
I understand.
Dr. Jume, good morning.
Good morning.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's Jumis, Jumes.
Okay, Jumis, I'm sorry. Dr. Jumis, what is your position at Kerrville State Hospital?
I work as a licensed psychologist.
And how long have you been in that profession?
I was licensed in 1997.
And what type of education do you have to go through in order to become a licensed psychologist?
So I earned a bachelor's degree at the University of Texas in 1989. I completed my doctoral training in clinical psychology at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center at Dallas in 1995. Part of that training involves coursework, and the other involves practice experience and the completion of a research project called a dissertation. After that, I was set for exams and was licensed as a psychologist in 1997.
And the type of work that you do at Kerrville State Hospital, is it different in any way than, maybe a psychologist that somebody might see for family issues or drug issues or anything like that?
I believe so, in the sense that Kerrville State Hospital is a specialty treatment environment, and the treatment population at Kerrville State Hospital is almost exclusively persons acquitted of criminal charges by reason of insanity.
Okay. So it's fair to say that you have experience dealing with people who are NGRI, right?
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about the relationship that you have with Miss Caldwell, how long you've been treating her, what have you.
So here at Kerrville State Hospital, I am not involved at all in her treatment. My role is separate to the extent that we can within a single facility to provide as much objectivity toward an assessment of her benefit of treatment and response to treatment and recommendations about readiness to transition to a next level of service. So my role in her case is exclusively as an evaluator of those forensic mental health issues.
So you're coming in as almost like an impartial, I guess, party to kind of review what's been going on to determine whether somebody is eligible or how much progress they've made, things like that.
That is the goal. Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that capacity, what interactions did you have with Miss Caldwell?
So I met with her first in March of 2022, and then again a couple of weeks later in April, so that I could conduct an assessment. I made a report to the treatment team about that. I think it was referenced earlier in this proceeding as a forensic consultation. My report was dated June 2nd of 2022. I also met with her a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of this hearing, and outside of those things, we haven't had any contact.
Okay. As part of doing your assessment and making your recommendation on Miss Caldwell's case, did you have to become familiar with the history of her case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that in terms of, the case history on this matter.
Sure. My goal was to understand the question that the treatment team asked me. I was asked to assist with evaluating her current status and her risks with respect to transitioning to community aftercare. In other words, was she would there be safety for the community and for Ms. Caldwell with respect to transition to the community? So I reviewed her chart, which described the incident, which eventually was acquitted by reason of insanity, that involved the stabbing death of her young child. And I reviewed her treatment and response to treatment by way of chart review. I met with Ms. Caldwell on a couple of occasions, as I referenced. I consulted with a member of her treatment team to get some additional perspective about her course in progress. And I spoke with her sister to try to get a further understanding of her illness course in progress, to try to understand the intersection of factors which could contribute to ongoing risk, especially violence to others.
Right, and that's what I was about to ask. You know, in kind of preparing your recommendation, were you able to identify any triggers that may have led to this kind of aggressive outburst?
So, like Dr. Sant'Ambrosio, there were several facets that are important to understand. One way to think about things is to look at the history, which is unchanging. History has already happened. And another is to look at clinical factors. Another would be connected to things like a person's disposition, their personality, and those contributions to the question you're asking. And then other would be to look at situations that could contribute. So I gave thought to all of those areas and outlined those, or maybe discussed those in my report.
Okay. Now, with regard to her history, what was it about her history that was a possible contribution to this outburst? And I don't know if I'm stating that correctly, outburst, or however, I don't know the term you would use, but this episode.
I referenced it in my report as her tragedy. And in this case, from a historical perspective, during an episode of severe mental illness, there were major mood symptoms that had to do with an elevated quality of mood, lack of sleep, higher than normal energy level. She was planning her son's birthday party. She had psychosis. There was kind of an erratic and confused quality of thinking. So she had, and delusions. She had she expressed serious symptoms of a major mental illness, which was the set of factors that eventually resulted in her acquittal of the charge by reason of insanity. And she, those things existed in a context. This is a maternal filicide. There were some implications of a murder-suicide scenario. There were facets of the incident that were driven, if you will, by her mental illness.
And so when you talk about mental illness, you said, look, there's various things we look at. We look at history, then we look at the clinical, we look at disposition. Is the mental illness considered part of the clinical?
Yes.
Okay, so can you give us some, additional detail about that?
Yeah, so when you think about mental illness, it would be a constellation of major factors. In her case, a break from reality, major mood symptoms, and there would be concerns that her illness process is possibly episodic in nature. One of the complexities in this particular case is that this is the first instance in which she expressed these major symptoms of a mental illness. And so there's not a lot of treatment history. There's no treatment history preceding this tragedy. And so since then, her symptoms have improved to where she's at her baseline. But in concert with all of that are these, when you think about mental illness, it's in some ways difficult to separate mental illness from the kind of personality factors that can contribute to a person's tendencies when they respond to stress. And that's why, in the formulation I provided in my report, I reviewed what are thought of as dynamic factors for understanding the contributions that are changeable. The historical factors don't change, but the dynamic factors clinically can change, and that's been the focus of her treatment, and naturally an important focus of the report that I wrote.
Well, and with regard to what you were saying, you said, look, history is unchanging. The historical factors that existed back then, we can't change that. But then, you have this situation where you have mental illness. The mental illness, it appears, has been addressed in part through medications. What other ways do you kind of address that mental illness?
Sure. In an environment like the Texas State Hospital system, there are steps in the progress. One is that in this case, Ms. Caldwell was treated at the maximum security unit. She was transitioned after a security review process to Kerrville State Hospital for ongoing care in a less restricted setting. Here at Kerrville, not only did she get the medications that were being talked about, but also a treatment environment that's designed to promote healing. Inside that is a level system, which includes reviews to promote a person's autonomy within the hospital setting. And in this case, Ms. Caldwell advanced into the highest level, which translates to her functioning with unsupervised grounds access during certain times, which demonstrates, her safety and collaboration with her treatment team and cooperation with her peer group. She's been enrolled in psychotherapy and worked to improve her understanding of herself and contributions really to the distress that we all bring distress to our own lives. And for her therapy is an important part of her treatment as well. And she was provided with a variety of groups and educational experiences to improve her understanding.
And, earlier you were saying, look, with regard to mental illness through medication, through the program here, she is now back at her baseline. What do you mean by that? What is her baseline?
So commonly, mental health professionals will use a clinical strategy to evaluate a person's mental status. It means things like, how's a person thinking and feeling lately, like over the last couple of weeks? Are there symptoms of a psychosis that could be at hand, or elevated or depressed mood? And to check things like attention and concentration and memory and problem solving in a kind of screening way. It's a standard practice. And every time I've evaluated Ms. Caldwell's mental status, I think my findings are consistent with chart records for a long time, that she's been free of symptoms of psychosis and free of symptoms of a major mood disturbance, which would be the principal concerns in her illness constellation.
So this baseline is not something that's only come about within the last month or two. This is kind of, there's a history to the fact that she's been stable.
That's right. She's been able to maintain stability for a long period of time.
Okay. And when you were describing the autonomy that she has at the hospital, you indicated that there are periods of time where she is allowed to be unsupervised around the hospital.
That's correct.
Do all the patients at the hospital have that type of autonomy?
They have the opportunity for it when they are safe for that. So no, not everybody has that same level, and that level can change. A person can be doing well for a while, and then there might be concerns that emerge. So that's a monitoring tool as well. And she's been able to maintain her high level. It's called a green tag.
Okay, so I guess, is it fair to say she's earned her green tag?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and since the time that she has earned her green tag, there haven't been any incidents with her that would cause you to say, hey, she doesn't deserve that green tag anymore, or she's not fit to have that?
I saw none.
Okay. You said one of the other things that you take into consideration is disposition of the patient. Can you describe Ms. Caldwell's disposition?
What I meant by that when I said it was dispositional or in other words, personality, style, and factors. There are a style of coping that's a little black and white in her thinking that can represent some vulnerability for destabilization under stress. I think Dr. Sant'Ambrosio referenced a vulnerability. The fact that someone's treatment may change from a hospital level of service to an aftercare level of service represents a vulnerability to challenges with coping that can become stressful in some cases to a market level. So what I meant when I said that was that she has some qualities in her background that represent vulnerability to stress. That's not surprising, and knowing about it can help people to monitor. The goal of transition is to identify when to tighten or sometimes loosen degrees of structure, support, and supervision that a person would need to be successful. The hospital represents high and sometimes very high levels of structure, support, and supervision to promote treatment and improvement. And aftercare allows for a well-informed treatment provider to identify and monitor in such ways as to tighten or relax degrees in which an aftercare plan would promote her safety, with the understanding that there are always times when a person's needs can change in such a way that rehospitalization comes under consideration and may need to happen.
Well, with regard to, you'd mentioned, one of the concerns might be stressors due to the changes of environment. That would at least appear to be true anytime any patient is transitioning from a structured environment to a less structured environment. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's not unique to Ms. Caldwell.
Correct.
Okay. With regard to Ms. Caldwell, what concerns would you have about, or concerns or just things that, hey, these are things that when she transitions to a step down that we're going to be looking out for?
One I've already mentioned, and that is that there's no history of her treatment in the community. All of her mental health treatment has been isolated to this incident. Prior to her tragedy, she didn't express serious symptoms of a mental illness. She was young at the time that this happened. So one aspect is that it's very common for people with serious mental illness to feel better and then decide maybe they don't need treatment anymore. That happens to all of us. Sometimes we stop our antibiotics a little earlier after, our sore throat feels better, right? So she doesn't have a history of treatment non-adherence, but she doesn't have any community treatment prior to her hospitalization. That'd be one that can be monitored, and that would be recommended and vital, I think. Another would be just that sometimes a person starts feeling better and they want to hurry back into their life at this phase of things. And so it's, I think, important in this case for Ms. Caldwell to take things slowly. Dr. Sant'Ambrosio used the word gradual. I think that to go slow and to experience treatment success is pretty important. And I think those would be concerns here.
With regard to some of those concerns, and I know Mr. Stegan's going to testify, but insofar as you're aware, are there mechanisms in place to help address those concerns?
yes, a person can have treatment monitoring that includes monitoring for medication. Does the person take their medicine? That can be observed even in a residential setting, a group home setting, things like that by staff that's available. Another could be things like counseling and therapies, which would provide two things. Again, ongoing eyes on the case, somebody who is informed and can identify clinical changes, maybe deterioration or regression in certain skills or behaviors that could signal onset of mental illness. Substance use was alluded to. I haven't talked about that, but the contributions of substance use to this filicide is, I think for me, they're not well understood. I would be concerned. I would be alarmed if she were to return to substance using. And so insulating her, both in terms of promoting a good, healthy environment of living, as well as ongoing treatment in that area, it would just be good to inoculate and to maintain. And then, maybe volunteering or a part-time job at some point a little down the road would be better than jumping full steam into a busy work life. So there are strategies that I've outlined, and that usually get developed in an aftercare plan, an outpatient management plan that kind of pull those factors together to try to project into the community the kinds of treatment a person would need in order to be successful with treatment maintenance and personal growth.
With regard to this transition, do you feel that this transition of Ms. Caldwell as part of the step down plan places the community in danger?
So from the perspective of thinking about maternal filicide, specifically, most people who have experienced that kind of tragedy never have a serious risk of hurting anybody else. In other words, they don't, the literature says that there's no other major like extreme violence. And so that's favorable. So from that perspective, I think we're hopeful. Is there no risk? I wouldn't say that. There's the history alone drives me to an understanding that her risk is elevated above that of the general population. So the question then turns to, can the risk be managed? Okay. In this case, that's what I recommended. I thought that treatment could be structured in such a way that she could successfully transition to outpatient aftercare.
Okay, and that kind of leads to my next question is, when we're looking at these matters, we're looking at the safety of the community, but then we're also looking at Ms. Caldwell's just treatment. And what is the ultimate goal of, as far as treatment for Ms. Caldwell?
Well, so the maintenance of her clinical status so that she doesn't experience active symptoms of psychosis and that she doesn't experience active symptoms of a mood, like an elevated mood, a manic episode. Those are principal, because for her, I think she'll have some sense of mastery and allow her the sense of accomplishment that she's maintaining, and it's certainly be difficult, I think, to contend with breakthrough symptoms. But the nature of her illness raises the question, even the probability, that her experience of mental illness could be episodic. So the goal of treatment is to minimize or eliminate breakthrough symptoms. But if they occur, to recognize them very rapidly and to assertively assist her to maybe more intensive level of supervision. It could require rehospitalization down the road. Her treatment adherence at this point seems to be a good indicator that she can transition successfully and maintain the current level of mental health that she enjoys.
So, the situation that we're in where she's transitioning, is it fair to say that, that is part of the course of care, kind of putting her in a different environment, maybe giving her a little more responsibility, and then seeing how she manages that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, and again, is this something, when you make these recommendations, is it something that you take lightly or that you just make on a whim, or?
No, they're serious because there is a public safety concern, and there is the concern for her, the provision of her care in the least restricted setting. That's the fulcrum.
Okay. And so with regard to your opinion, is your opinion that so long as Ms. Caldwell, continues with this treatment plan that you all have laid out for her, is she likely to cause serious harm to another while she's going through this treatment?
So as to is she likely, I would say that in the absence of symptoms of a major mental illness, she is able to benefit and contribute. The caveat, of course, is that her transition is a matter to be undertaken by people who understand her history and her needs, and who will vigilantly monitor so that this person who does have an elevated risk of harm to other above that of the general population, that this person can be provided a safe and effective course of care, with the understanding that knowing her can help to identify times when she may need to be more intensively supported should her clinical status change. There's still things we just don't know.
Sure. Is there anything else, any other bit of information that you think the court needs to consider in making its decision on this matter?
I would only just remind the court that the report that I submitted details things I've been sharing today.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Mr. Thornton?
Thank you. Doctor, I have a few questions for you. In reading your report, and also when Dr. Sanabranjo testified earlier, he mentioned this as well, that a significant factor that you've both cited is the fact that she has had a hysterectomy. And so there's no danger of the postpartum aspect of her mental health concerns. Is that correct?
So you mentioned postpartum, and if my memory serves me, the child was a couple of years old. And so for my review of the literature, it's less clear to me the role of, for example, hormone changes when we think about postpartum. And I'm a psychologist and I'm not a medical doctor, and so it's not like it's unimportant or that I haven't thought about those things. But my own sense is that the hysterectomy it probably provides. Well, first of all, it looks like that it was medically directed and not elective, but it's the question I think turns to victim pool characteristics, And so the decedent, of course, was a toddler. There was some, the episode had other violence characteristics. They included Miss Caldwell harming herself. And at least from a law enforcement perspective, there was concern that she may turn her attention to others in her immediate surroundings. And so I think to understand that the case does represent a filicide is important, but also to recognize that this event was erratic and unexpected from her history to that point. It turns attention to what I would call victim pool characteristics past just her own child.
Okay. And you mentioned the literature. I've actually been trying to look some of that up here the past couple of days and right now, and it looks like in terms of postpartum, the timeline when something like that would occur is fairly short. And in fact, the max that I found is up to a year after childbirth. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that is consistent with what I've seen. Yes, sir.
Okay, and here we're dealing. I think she was preparing for the second birthday of the child.
That's my recollection. Yes.
Okay, and this event, you talked about victim pool characteristics and that she harmed her son, but also herself. And some family members. But I think your report also mentions how during this incident, she went after her sister as well as her sister's son, correct?
I saw that in the police report and I documented that. Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have harm to herself, harm to her son, potential harm to her sister, and potential harm to her sister's son.
Yes, sir. In the throes of that serious mental illness.
Yes, sir. So I believe, and I'm trying to find in your report, I want to say around, page 7 of what I have, which is different from what you have. But I believe you mentioned how she states that she had sought help for her mental illness.
Yes, sir.
It might have been her sister who mentioned that, but I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of you said.
Yeah, I said either her or her sister mentioned that she had sought help prior to this incident. Is that correct?
Yeah, she and I talked about that specifically. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so she said that did she say who she had sought help from or how she went about that?
Yeah. My understanding is that it was largely through pastoral care and counseling with people she knew well, like family members. And my sense of that is she didn't have an understanding at that time that she was harboring a major mental illness. And so lots of people do reach out to their pastor, for example.
Okay. And she also mentions that, I guess, during that time, I forget exactly how it's worded in here, but something about there was a heavily religious experience going on with her that transitioned outside of the traditional pastoral care involving like voodoo and things of that like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And all of that she reported going on in the period before this happened.
That's right. In a relatively short period before this happened. Okay. Yes, sir.
And she had reached out to her family and to pastors for support.
Yes, she tried some strategies to kind of clean herself, if you will, ritualistically. And the ideas that she took rapidly became very unconventional, which is hallmark for a delusional system. And so that's the sort of signal of the emergence of her mental illness at that time.
And when you talk about this delusion, it's where you're in a state of where you're essentially separated from reality, and
a delusion,
your normal common sense is gone.
That's right. A delusion is a fixed, false belief that is unconventional. People in general society would find it to be odd, unusual. Her religious experiences at first not unconventional, but they rapidly became fragmented and bizarre,
Okay.
and and like you said, a break from reality.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
I have nothing
Go ahead.
further. I have nothing further.
All right. Hey, Dr. Jooms released?
Yes, Your Honor.
No
Hey, Dr.
objection.
Jooms, you're free to take off. You're free to remain.
Thank
Okay,
you.
your next witness,
Mr. John Stegan.
go ahead, sir.
Mr. Stegan, can you please explain to me, you are part of the Step Down program?
Yes, sir. I'm the program manager for the State Hospital Step Down Program with Bluebonnet Trails here in Seguin, Texas.
Okay, so is that where Ms. Caldwell is going to be transitioning to?
Yes.
Okay, can you describe the program that you all have in place for Ms. Caldwell?
Absolutely. So this program is from HHSC. It's designed to intentionally, effectively step down psychiatrically individuals from the state hospital from an inpatient setting to a more appropriate community-based setting. So our program has 2 locations, one in Georgetown and one here in Seguin. The Seguin home is located more in a rural area, and our nearest store is about a 3-mile drive. And both locations are staffed 24 hours a day to provide assistance. And we also have on-call assistance as well. And with this program, we do have an intensive treatment team that will help her develop a person-centered plan, a trauma-informed individual transition plan with her and her support system as well. And this will identify any of the services and supports that will benefit her to continue with her recovery from the state hospital.
While she is at Bluebonnet Trails, will she have counselors available to her, psychologists, what have you?
Yes, sir. So her treatment team will consist of a psychiatrist, peer specialists, rehab specialists. They'll have me as the program manager overseeing the operation. We'll have a registered nurse to help with medication management, housing and employment specialist to help her post and securing employment and volunteer opportunities as previously mentioned. We also have care coordinators, substance use counselors, psychological professionals, and we'll enroll her to secure a primary care provider as well.
Okay. Describe for the court kind of what a day might be like for Ms. Caldwell at Bluebonnet Trails.
Yeah, so a day we'll just have intensive case management. So depending on talking to her intensive treatment team to see what worked over there as far as groups, we'll enroll her in the different groups that's offered with Bluebonnet. We'll provide medication management. On the daily, we'll provide some fitness in there. So we'll enroll her in a gym membership, and we have groups over there. We have groups throughout the community, any volunteer opportunities that we have. So just to keep a busy schedule, just so we can help her reintegrate into a community life. And we also have them come and learn everything in the community, what they have over there, and participate in various activities and events that happen in the area.
What type of counseling is available at Bluebonnet Trails?
So we do have various counseling. We do have one-on-one counseling sessions with therapists. We have family therapists. We have DBT. We have peer support. We have SUD, substance use, and she will, if approved, she will be meeting with our psychiatrists one-on-one on a monthly basis as well.
Okay. I do know that there was some concern about the fact that Ms. Caldwell was using substances leading up to this tragedy. Is there any kind of monitoring for, illegal drugs or anything like that?
Yes, sir. So we do random drug tests once or twice a month. And then we also do room inspections, random room inspections throughout the month as well. So they don't know when it will happen. We do have a mechanism in place just to make sure that we are in compliance and the clients are in compliance as well. We'll call them residents from here on out, but yeah, the residents, when they are enrolled in our program, we do random room inspections and random drug screens as well.
So earlier, Dr. Jooms and Dr. San Ambrosio were talking about the need to kind of monitor whether this mental illness started to manifest itself again. What kind of systems do you guys have in place if you start noticing those things?
So if we do notice we have any symptoms of psychosis, we do have a 24-hour manned staff, and we do have a MCOT team, which is our mobile crisis outreach team. So if they do feel that she's displaying various behavioral change, then we'll contact our MCOT staff to do an assessment on her.
Okay. And if Ms. Caldwell was to, I guess, the way that I would describe it, violate the rules, or you see that, hey, she's not complying with anything that we're setting out for her, what would the consequence of that be?
So with the consequence, that would be up to we'll deal with that with the district clerk and the attorneys.
Okay, so that is something that the court would be notified if she's not following the rules, or she's found with a big bag of drugs or whatever the case is.
Yes, sir. They will be immediately notified with the treatment team and our staff as well.
Okay, so there are definite consequences to not following the rules at Bluebonnet Trails.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, Ms. Caldwell's status, she was found NGRI. Have you all ever had any other residents who had that status?
Yes, sir. We had one here in our home, actually, and then we have 3 currently up in Georgetown. So we do have experiences with NGRI, and actually they are one of our favorable ones because they do provide great results when it comes to their recovery.
Okay. Is there anything else that you feel the judge might need to know in order to make his decision?
No, just that in order for them to be accepted into this program, we go to 3 phases. It's a very intensive road and journey for Ms. Caldwell to be accepted into the step down program. And we went through 3 phases. She did express and show us her binder of accomplishments that she did while she was there. So that's something that we have never experienced or seen before. So that was something that really impressed us. And I think that was something that you guys should take into consideration when making.
When you say 3 phases, what do you mean?
Yeah, so the first phase is when we talk to her personal treatment team and they present her readiness to discharge. That's when they present everything all her accomplishments, everything that she did, her readiness for discharge, and any recommendations. If we deem that we as Bluebonnet or the step down program, if we deem that's appropriate, then we'll move on into phase 2, which is where we meet the client personally and get to know what their goals are, what they want moving forward, and give them the tour of the house and all the programs that we offered. And then once we get the approval from the client that they want to move here, then we move into phase 3, where we discuss the lease agreement and additional goals and obtain permanent documents and enroll her in various programs and services. So with that, it is extremely intensive. I think this Case came to us in November, I want to say. So it's been a real long process, way longer than others that we're used to. But I'm glad we're where we're at right now.
And you said that there was, she met with you, she had a binder of her accomplishments?
She did. It's everything that she accomplished there. It was a real big binder. It's like super thick. And so that was something that we're real proud of because she was naming some of the stuff that she did, all the groups that she did. And so we were pretty impressed. And speaking with her treatment team as well over there, they advocated so much for her. And we're not real quick with accepting people. We need to make sure that they are ready to discharge. So it's not like, hey, they're ready to discharge and we're like, okay, we'll accept you. Like it's a real intensive process.
Okay, so is it fair to say that Ms. Caldwell's demeanor was that she was enthusiastic about continuing this course of treatment?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass a witness.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Now, can you tell me, you mentioned Bluebonnet has 2 facilities. Why did you choose the Seguin facility instead of Georgetown?
So the facility that she chose was in Georgetown or in Seguin because her support system lives in San Antonio.
Okay, so she chose that.
Correct, sir.
Okay. Now let's talk about that facility. You said it's located away from Seguin, or where is it located?
It's in Seguin. It's in the Seguin area, but it's in a more rural area. It's not in the actual city.
Okay. Let's talk about this facility itself. It's a home, basically. I believe 6 residents live there. Is that correct? Or there's
Yes, sir.
room for 6 beds?
We can house up to 6 residents, correct?
Okay. And are all those MGRI patients?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, what type of security? Can she come and go from this as she pleases?
So not initially. She will not be able to do that until we can get her a routine and a set schedule. Like the previous witnesses said, you know, we want to gradually move her into a more comfortable situation so that once she gets a more set schedule and a more set routine with her groups, with the programs that she's enrolled in, then we can start talking about that. But again, that will be discussed with the courts as well, just to make sure we discuss the progress that she's making and then the recommendations that we have, and then with the approval of the courts.
Okay. Now, given that this is Zoom, it's particularly difficult to show you exhibits. Would defense or the court have objection with me just displaying a map of the location and seeing if he says that this is the correct location of the facility?
I have no objection.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'm going to share a screen if I'm allowed to do so here. Are you able to see on your screen the map that I've displayed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the Google Maps tells me anyways that that's 211 Meadow Lake, which is your facility. Does that look correct to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so describe the area around this facility. What are these, what is this?
Residential.
Residential area. What type of residential area? Do you know?
I want to say it's single family homes.
Okay.
And then there's a RV park to the top right along the Guadalupe River. If you look.
Over in this direction.
Yes, sir.
Okay, an RV park. Okay. That's all that I have, and I'll send this to the court as State's Exhibit A and offer that.
Any objection?
I have no objection, Judge.
Without objection, State's Exhibit A is submitted into evidence.
Okay, just before I forget, I'll put that in the chat for the court. Okay, and so let's see. In the facility, you said that you would transition her to basically her freedom level from beginning to end would change from more restrictive to less restrictive. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
In her room, are there locks on the doors? Is there a security guard at the front? What type of security is there?
So with the security, we do have cameras that faces towards the window just for added security. And then we have security around the facility as far as staff. It's not armed security, but we do have 24-hour staff who do 30-minute checks on our clients to make sure that their well-being is okay.
Okay.
When it comes to visual and video surveillance, we do have cameras up. And so it will be operational soon. It's currently in the process of becoming operational, but we'll have it operational soon.
Okay, and my understanding is we had an investigator go and visit. He said at the time there was only one camera. Is that the current state of the facility?
Yes, sir. One camera facing the entrance, and then we're in the process of installing a camera in the back entrance, the back door.
To the back door. Okay. How about her room? Are there any locks or any security alarms on the windows?
So we do not have any locks on the windows, and that's why we have the cameras. And we do 30-minute checks just for that added security. And with the locks, we do have privacy, but we do have master keys that will open the doors.
Okay. And so you said the front and the back, there's 4 sides to the building. Are there any cameras on the other sides though?
No, sir. So currently we only have one right now facing the front door or facing the entrance.
Okay. And part of their integration is teach them how to do a lot of daily things that maybe have been missing from their lives. Is that correct? Including cooking, for example?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. And while that occurs, they do have access to cooking utensils in the facility, such as knives and things of that nature.
No, sir. So our wood group staff, which is our contractors, if they do decide, if some of the clients, we do groups where it does involve cooking, our wood group staff will do all the cutting with everything that's sharp, but then they will do all the ingredients and the mixing and stuff like that. So they will not have access to anything sharp, no scissors, no knives, no sharp objects.
Okay. So if my investigator toured the facility and was told that they actually do have access to those, but they're locked up and they're only there under supervision, that would be incorrect. They never have access to them.
It's the sharp objects are locked up, correct?
So, but I understand that, but I'm specifically asking, do they ever have access to sharp objects, even under supervision?
No, sir, never.
I have no other questions.
I don't have any
Mr.
other
Brown?
questions for this witness, Judge.
Okay, any other witnesses?
Ms. Joy Okoye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had you down. All right, go ahead, sir.
Ms. Okoye, how are you acquainted with Tashana Caldwell?
I am Miss Caldwell's assigned social worker here at the hospital.
Okay. And how often have you been her assigned social worker?
I started working for Kerrville in December of 2021, and I've been working with Miss Caldwell since that time.
How often do you have interactions with Ms. Caldwell?
Here at the hospital, we usually have monthly meetings on our unit with the patients. So for at least once a month, we met with her. But personally, I would meet with her on the unit if there were discussions that needed to be had on a one-on-one basis. So more frequently than that, but for at least once a month.
Okay. Could you describe Ms. Caldwell's demeanor to the court?
Since my time working with her, Ms. Caldwell has displayed stability in all areas, both physically, mentally, emotionally, since we started working with her, treating her, and especially while we've started working on the outpatient management plan with her. She's displayed an optimistic behavior, even when there were challenges that did come up while we were working on the discharge planning. She maintained stability in her mood. She took everything in great stride and demonstrated a great level of patience.
Does Ms. Caldwell have support from family?
Yes, she does. One of her strongest support systems is her sister who lives in San Antonio. She is also in contact with her father, her cousins, aunts and uncles, extended relatives.
How often, are you aware of how often she is in contact with her sister?
She communicates with her sister, I believe, every day.
Every day. Okay. And this is a sister who resides in San Antonio?
Yes, correct.
With regard to Ms. Caldwell's status at the hospital, I believe it was either Dr. San Ambrosio or Dr. Jumis who said that she is on the least restrictive, I believe it was Dr. Jumis, that she has a green pass.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so what does that mean?
So the green level tag gives a patient access to specified areas of the hospital campus at allocated times. And that just means that they're not under any type of staff supervision, so they can frequently walk around the campus, exercise as they need to, whatever it is that they need to do, get fresh air, sunlight. And it's the most, the least restrictive setting. Depending, like Dr. Jumis had testified earlier, depending on any behavioral changes that the treatment team or the hospital notices, that level can change. But since her admission to Kerrville in 2018, Ms. Caldwell has maintained that green level status.
Okay, so she's had that green level pass for the last 4 years.
Yes, that's correct.
During that time that she's had that green level pass, where she has at times unsupervised access to the entire campus, has she ever tried to escape?
No, there has been no records or a history of unauthorized departure where a patient could just walk off the campus or try to escape. She has not had a history of that.
Okay, she's never tried to hop a fence or anything like that to run away?
No, she has not.
Okay. Has she ever had opportunities since she's been at Kerrville State Hospital to go into the community, whether it's supervised or what have you?
Yes, she has. I believe it was in 2019 where the hospital had requested for court passes. And these are passes that usually allow patients to go off campus for a variety of reasons. At the time, the hospital was participating in what's called Pathways program. It's a program that's designed to strengthen the patient's level of insight into mental illness and to enable them to see how the community functions and to also observe how they interact with the community. So at that time, they could get off-campus passes and go to, say, for example, an HEB or a Walmart, purchase personal items, hygiene items that they needed, a variety of activities. And Ms. Caldwell participated in that program. She did go off campus and there were no concerns with her interactions in the community with individuals, and she successfully completed that program.
Okay. So during the time that she had these passes to go out into the community, that's into the community of Kerrville?
Yes, correct.
During those times, she never attempted to escape or run away or do anything like that?
No, she did not.
Okay. During the time, and I know that you've been acquainted with Ms. Caldwell since 2021, so maybe a little over a year at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say she's been in compliance with the rules and the standards that are set out by Kerrville State Hospital?
Yes, she has been in compliance. We haven't had any issues of aggression or behavioral issues that have required any type of restriction on her part. She's also very proactive, working with her treatment team to ensure that she gets the treatment and stability that she needs here at the hospital.
Okay. I'm not sure if one of the doctors said this, or maybe this is something I had heard previously, but would it be fair to describe her as, in terms of patients at the Kerrville State Hospital, as a model patient?
Yes, she attends her classes. She has been medication compliant, no issues of non-compliance. She interacts with her peers in an appropriate manner. We haven't had any issues with behavioral issues with any peers in her on the unit, even when she's out on the campus ground with staff, because we do see the patients when they're on their green time. She interacts well, is polite and respectful.
Okay. And I know no one can ever guarantee, how somebody's going to react to a certain situation. There's no guarantees, especially, when we're talking about mental illness, but based on what you know about Miss Caldwell, Do you feel that this transition is appropriate at this time?
Yes, I do. She has maintained, like all the previous witnesses have said, that level of stability in her treatment, and she has demonstrated a willingness to continue with that treatment plan even after discharge, recognizing that mental illness can be a lifelong issue, and she recognizes that these are the regulations, these are the stipulations from the court as well, from the hospital, from her treatment team, and these are the certain things that she would need to do to maintain that level of stability. And she has been very proactive in maintaining that.
If she was to run afoul of any of the rules, are there mechanisms in place to deal with that?
Yes. So the outpatient management plan that was submitted to the court as well documents the specific steps that would need to be taken if she does demonstrate any type of non-compliance. And I believe John Stegan talked a little bit about it, specifically in relation to the step-down program. The first step would be that her assigned case manager from the step-down program would reach out to the supervisor of the program, let them know that, hey, this is what we've observed, changes are taking place. And like he said, they would conduct an assessment. And if it's determined that this is an issue of concern, they would notify the court. Ms. Caldwell would need to report to the court, that your attorney would be notified as well. And then the court would decide what the next steps would be based off of that.
Okay, so it's not something where if she broke rules, there's no consequence to it.
No, there are steps in place to address any non-compliance issues that do come up.
And like we've said, Mrs. Caldwell seems to be the type, at least for the last few years, who has followed the rules.
Yes, correct.
Is it fair to say she's done everything that the hospital has asked of her?
Yes, correct. She has.
I'll pass a witness.
Go ahead, Mr. Thornton.
I have no questions, Judge.
All right. Any other witnesses, Mr. Brewer?
The defense has no other witnesses, Your Honor. We rest.
All right, Mr. Thornton.
Judge, I'll have no witnesses as well.
Okay. Before we get any further or farther, I don't think I've received the exhibit from you, Mr. Thornton.
Oh, I thought I put it in the chat. Let me see.
It didn't make it. You may have posted it.
Oh, I put it, but I didn't click send.
Okay.
So now you should have it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Do y'all want a break before argument, or just go into argument?
I'm good, Judge. I'd rather proceed.
Yeah, I'm fine, Your Honor.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Brewer.
Your Honor, the standard on this matter is a preponderance of the evidence, that the court has to consider. We heard the testimony from the treating doctors on this matter that Ms. Caldwell has reached kind of the maximum benefit from her stay at Kerrville State Hospital. She has followed all of the rules. She has done everything that the state hospital has asked of her. She has been a model patient. I know that obviously due to the nature of the offense, due to the tragedy as Dr. Jooms described it, there's a concern because that's a violent offense. However, Dr. San Ambrosio discussed how through medications, through treatments, they were able to get her to kind of a stable baseline. And she has maintained that baseline for years now. Dr. Jooms testified about some of these triggers that were in place at the time that, this tragedy occurred that are no longer in place. Both doctors indicated that they felt comfortable and confident with her transition to this step-down plan. With regard to the step-down plan, they're not just saying, hey, you're free to go. She is going to be in a monitored environment, an environment that is staffed, where there is counseling available. an environment where there are people there to provide ongoing counseling, ongoing treatment, ongoing medication. With regard to the state's cross-examination about security measures, things like that, I think we've already seen that Miss Caldwell at the state hospital, they felt comfortable enough with her to where there were times where she was allowed unsupervised access to those grounds. She never had any incidents where she tried to run, she tried to escape. She's already been allowed to be out in the community in Kerrville. They never had any incidents where she tried to escape or she caused anybody problems. What we're talking about is just the next step in her treatment. This is part of the treatment process. I mean, the process is to continue working with Miss Caldwell to get her reintegrated insofar as possible into society. And this is going to be a part of it. A part of it is going to be putting her in situations where it's a little less restrictive. She has a little more responsibilities for her own care, and to see how she manages that and how she handles that. And if she doesn't manage it well and she doesn't handle it well, there's mechanisms in place to deal with that, Judge. This is not a parole hearing. This process that we're going through is rehabilitative and not punitive. And so you have doctors who are providing this care that say, hey, this is the next step in the care. And given that she's maintained this level of stability for the last few years, there's no evidence that she is going to deviate from that, or she is going to do anything that puts the community at danger or herself at danger. Now, obviously, we can't change the past. We can't change what happened. But I think the court needs to consider the fact that you have somebody who has demonstrated progress since 2016 and is now in a situation where all of these medical professionals say, look, we feel comfortable with her taking this next step in her treatment. Ms. Okoye testified that she has support from her family. She has support in the community, which is going to be important. And that during her stay at Kerrville State Hospital, she has been a model patient. Mr. Stegan testified that when he met with Ms. Caldwell, he was taken aback at just how prepared she was, how enthusiastic she was, and how motivated she was. And he said, we'd never seen somebody like that who was so motivated. So I would ask the court to, look at the evidence that's been presented and to take the advice and follow the advice of these medical professionals who say that, look, she's ready for this next step in her treatment, Judge.
Right, Mr. Thornton?
Yes, sir. I would like to address a couple things. First is the defense talked a little bit about how they said that she had support from her family and from the community. One thing I like to point out is that, you heard the doctor's testimony that she, in the conversation he had with her, that she reached out for help and for support before this incident happened. That support either failed or she didn't do it correctly, but the incident happened nonetheless. The other most important thing that I think I'd like the court to consider is the fact that she has talked about, the doctors have talked about numerous times this issue with, and what is cited numerous times in the report is the fact that the hysterectomy somehow prevents any future occurrences, which Dr. Junis said that, usually when we're talking about postpartum issues, we're talking about within about 12 months time frame. This happened at about 2 years. And it's not a child of, wasn't just simply a child of her own that was the victim. It was a child of her sister, as well as potentially her sister, who she sought to harm during this incident as well as herself, which the suicide issues continued long past this particular incident while she was in jail and into the hospital. The particular facility that they have picked for her to go to, or that she has picked to go to, is very concerning to me. In State's Exhibit A, you'll notice that it is situated right, they talked about a rural area, but it is situated right in the middle of a neighborhood, right on the river where there is trailer parks. There's children. You can notice in the back of several of those houses, there are swimming pools, presumably where children will play. And this facility has no locks on the windows. Two sides of the building is all they feel required to have videos facing towards the front and the back doors. There's no videos facing the windows. There's no videos facing the door of the residences. It doesn't seem that secure of a facility at all, with only 30-minute checks. And in fact, the gentleman's answer when asked, well, what happens if there's an incident? His response was, well, we'll call the district clerk. I'm not sure Margaret will be able to respond in time to help. So there's a lot of concerns about the facility that the state has and her ability to safely be reintegrated into the community. But more importantly, the legislature sets out for the court in Article 46C 263, Section G. It's the last thing that the legislature gives guidance to the court, which is in determining whether an acquitted person should be ordered to receive outpatient or community-based treatment and supervision rather than inpatient care and residential treatment, the court shall have as its primary concern the protection of society. And I think all these things we discussed show that this Bluebonnet facility in the middle of this neighborhood in Seguin, with her history, and not just the harming her children, but others. And by the way, this is something that didn't manifest itself for 20 years. And everybody said that she was completely fine throughout her whole life. And then all of a sudden, there was this episode. And everything that's been relied upon in the testimony today is the fact that she's had no other occurrences in approximately 10 years. Well, it took 20 years to get to the first. And so, Your Honor, I think if the court puts the primary concern, the protection of society, they would deny the defense's request to transition to inpatient. And also, being that this is a dual hearing, because the request was made at the tail end, and really there's only a few days left in this commitment. There's also the question of the renewal. We'll ask that you find by clear and convincing evidence that inpatient treatment is continued and order that for the next year.
Your Honor, if I may.
Go ahead, sir.
Judge, the state's position seems to be, well, because of this incident that occurred way back when, she's always a danger to society. So by that standard, she would never be able to transition. And the other thing that I would remind the state is that she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. When the state says, well, not only did she attack her child, she attacked, her nephew or whatever. Yes, she was in the middle of a major mental illness, so extreme that she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. When the state says, well, this took, 20 years to manifest itself. Yes, she was not getting mental health treatment. She was untreated. Dr. Jooms said, look, she didn't realize what was going on. She was starting to exhibit these symptoms of major mental illness. She went to a pastor. She went to family. Sometimes people do that. But obviously, as you can tell from the report, it was beyond that. This was major mental illness. So to take her, the person that she was untreated back then, and then say, the state's trying to make it seem as if that's the person, in that same state that you're going to be putting in a transitional center. It's not. And that's what the doctors testified about, that she has made significant progress. And now she's at a point in her treatment where she's ready to transition. With regard to these issues of, well, they're going to have her in a residential area, Judge, she already has unsupervised access, at the Kerrville State Hospital. She already has access to the community in Kerrville, and nothing's happened. So if that is not enough to say, well, she's demonstrated that she can be in a community without issue. We have these examples where she's done it and never run afoul of anything. Well, then I don't know what the court would feel comfortable with, because she's already demonstrated she can be unsupervised and it's fine. She's not going to run away. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't try to escape. She's been in the community and she's been fine. She hasn't tried to run away. She hasn't had any kind of violent episodes. I don't know what else Miss Caldwell could do. It's kind of like Miss Okoye said, she's done everything. She's done everything everybody has asked of her, and she has been a model patient. So I don't know at this point if there's anything the state wouldn't argue against. I mean, I think at this point, the state's arguing against it just to argue against it. So I think you have to defer on this matter to the medical opinions of these trained medical professionals who have said, we've looked at this and we think this next step is appropriate. And you don't have any evidence contrary to that, other than the state's argument that, well, we don't like the sound of it because of what this offense was.
And let me ask, and this may be for one of the witnesses, Kerrville State Hospital is considered inpatient, correct? Is that right? Anyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. What is the distinction between residential and inpatient? Or is there one?
They could be used simultaneously because residential typically signifies inpatient because it is more of a long-term treatment where the person currently resides in that hospital setting. So that is their home, that's where they receive the treatment, as opposed to an outpatient setting where they live in a different location and could be receiving treatment from a different location. But when it's residential in hospital or inpatient, they're receiving all the services from one specific location and they also reside in that same location.
Okay, so I guess that's my question. The Bluebonnet facility is a place that Ms. Caldwell would reside, but it's not considered a residential facility.
Yes, sir. It's a residential facility. However, all her treatment will be with Bluebonnet Trails. So all the different services that will be provided will be within Bluebonnet, but not in this specific location. So we have clinics around the community or virtual.
And just to add to that, Your Honor, so the Bluebonnet Trails is the local mental health authority. And so the step down program partners with the LMHA in that location to provide this intense comprehensive service for Ms. Caldwell.
Okay, I'm looking.
And the judge, if I may, I don't believe it's 100%. I mean, I think what Mr. Stegan is saying is that he considers it a residential facility because the person resides there. But for purposes of the statute in Chapter 46C, I do not believe it is classified as a residential facility. I think inpatient and residential are synonymous, or two sides of the same coin when we're talking about a state hospital. I believe that this falls under an outpatient facility or a community-based treatment.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to make sure I have that clear in my mind. Under
Those are two different things.
46C, 264, 265, it's considered community-based, even though Ms. Caldwell would reside there.
Correct.
Okay, anything else from anyone?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor, nothing from the state.
All right, I'll find this. Defense has shown that would be by a preponderance of the evidence, it would be appropriate to transfer Ms. Caldwell to the Bluebonnet facility. I want both sides to have a chance to look at the order. Do I have a proposed order on that? Because I want to make sure it's clear who's responsible for reporting and, if there are issues. I want to make sure that, I think Dr. Jumas said that there should be, Ms. Caldwell should be aggressively assisted if she is not following the rules or having substance abuse problems. So we have an order. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I do have an order that comes from the TDCA mental health book. One thing I would like to address legally about the way that we go about this, and that is the court order, is because we only have a few days left. I think it would be more appropriate for the court to make a finding that the state has met its burden to prove by clear and convincing evidence that she is in need of further treatment to prevent herself from being a danger to herself or others. However, the state has failed to meet its burden to prove that outpatient is not the most appropriate care. Basically, what that would do is allow her to be continued for the next year. Otherwise, if you make the ruling as it is now, we would have to have a second hearing before next Friday to continue her for the next year. So I'd ask the court to make that ruling now instead of the request to end her current treatment in outpatient care, just renew the next treatment with outpatient care. Does that make sense?
Mr. Barrera?
Yeah, no, Judge, Mr. Thornton is correct that, even when she transitions, we still have to have these status hearings throughout. So, rather than, I think we need this kind of proceeding to accomplish both of those things. One, do the transition, and then two, kind of address her current status and the court's findings as to that.
Okay, then I will make the requested finding about the statement and its burden on showing that Ms. Caldwell still needs to be supervised. But I'll also find that for the time being, the defense has shown by a preponderance of the evidence that it's appropriate to start transitioning that supervision to an outpatient program.
And I'll get together with Mr. Thornton on the order, Judge, and the wording.
And I just dropped the, oops, I thought
Yeah, I don't
here
see
in
it.
just a second, I will drop a Word document into the
No,
chat
it's gotta
box.
be, it's gotta be Zoom. It's gotta be a PDF.
PDF. Oh, that's the problem then. Never mind. I'll email it to Mr. Barrera and you and Your Honor, and
Okay,
we'll work on it.
all right, sounds good. Anything else for right now?
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
Nothing from the state.
Okay, and you have witnesses coming in on the Crowder case, Mr. Berger?
I do, Your Honor, and I told them to be here at 11:45 since we're starting at noon.
Okay, I will see you at noon.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and end the meeting.